Today's guest is a fellow parent educator whom I met in August last year through the Positive Discipline Association, which I had just joined. I just had been a new member. And my guest's name is Raffy, and what I was so impressed with was that courage that I saw in Raffy at how she presented an activity at our parent educator. It's like a global meeting for those who don't know, and the parent who might be interested in this. And positive discipline is comes from Adlerian psychology, and the founder of positive discipline is Jane Nelson. And what I absolutely love about positive discipline is that it really gives an experiential way of teaching these Adlerian principles. And what we're encouraged to do as parent educators is present these activities to each other and then share what maybe could be improved or what we learned. And I was so nervous when I joined that first call. And I was so impressed with Raffy, how you were able to, I heard that you had an accent, and in a moment you can share where you're from, how you were able to just, even though you might have made a mistake in typing, you were just ready for it, and you were holding that space for the group. So that has really impressed me, and I've gotten to know you better over the last few weeks, over the summer, and every time I'm really inspired. And not only that, but the topic we're going to talk about on today is having the courage to be imperfect in everything, courage. And I only found out a couple of weeks ago that your business is called Finding Your Courage. So with that, I'm going to bring on Raffy, and I would love for you to share where you're from and maybe where you're based, and if you have children, and how you found Adlerian parenting and positive discipline, and maybe what got you interested in it.
How much time do you have? Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to be here, and I'm always happy to share my experience. I'm Italian. I come from Turin, and then when I got married, my husband was living at the time in the UK, so we moved to the UK, and after that, because of his job, we moved around a bit. We were in Central America for a bit, then returned to the UK, then Spain, back to the UK, and now we are in Panama. We have 3 children, born each one in a different country. So we have a daughter who's 27, a son who is 24, and a teenager of 16 who is still living with us.
Okay.
And it's a long story. I'm trying to make it as short as possible, but I grew up in a context where perfectionism was a must. And with perfectionism normally goes judgment and criticism. Mm-hmm. My mom especially was a very angry person, and I'm not saying it in a I think as you start to do your own inner work, you grow in compassion towards the other people as well. Mm-hmm. And so, but it's a recognition, she was very angry, she was very judgmental, she expected perfection from herself and from everyone else. And so I became a mom like that as well. And I was very angry, very critical, perfectionist towards myself and everyone else. And I was using the very traditional way of parenting that I had learned, and then I was carry on, punishment, humiliation, screaming, the consequences, which is actually almost like wanted your child to feel bad so that he will learn something, all this mentality. the interesting thing is, as this was all happening, there was a little part of me inside that wasn't happy, that didn't feel comfortable with all of that. But I was still doing it because that's what I thought was parenting. Then our third child was born. There is a bit of a gap from the first two.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was consciously, unconsciously, from intuition. Both my husband and I started to parenting slightly differently. In part, perhaps also because it was a third child, you are more relaxed in some things. And so there was already a process of change. And then about 7 years ago, just out of, one of the synchronicity of life, I came across this book.
Oh, Brene Brown.
Yes. I don't know if you have read this one.
Okay.
The Gifts of Imperfections was one of the, it's her second book. It's really young. And the way it happened was so funny because at the time I was working in the UK as a gardener.
Yeah.
And so I was listening to a lot of books. I had a subscription in Audible, and I ran out of credits. So I discovered that Audible does a little, every day offers a deal for $1.99 or $2.99, a deal book. And so I was always every day searching for something new. And normally they were type of books that they were not my type, but they were James Bond or some kind of things. Yeah. Until this title appeared, and I thought, ooh, this is interesting, because the subtitle is also "Let Go of Who You Think You Are Supposed to Be and Embrace Who You Are." And I think I was ready for that. Perhaps years before I wouldn't have touched it.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is I started listening to this book, and I remember crying almost through all the book. It was really a changing point. And then immediately after, I then read Daring Greatly, which now I discovered. At the time, I didn't really, I think there was so much there, but there is a whole chapter on parenting. And it's amazing. And I realized how amazing it was after having done Positive Discipline. And it just, but so I was in the process of doing work in myself. In the meantime, we moved back here. And when our son was at school, the Annalisa Williams, who is a trainer of Positive Discipline, came to our school to do a little introductory talk on Positive Discipline. And again, I was sitting through when she was talking about the 4 types of parenting. And again, I started crying, because I thought that was, that little thing that was bothering me all for the years when I was doing the wrong parenting, I would say, I don't know, the unhelpful parenting.
Yeah.
It all was there. It was making sense. The difference between permissive parenting, authoritarian parenting, and the middle of the road. And so I wanted to do more, and I became so interested. And funnily enough, the pandemic started, and I started following her on Instagram and all of that. And she was offering, the first course online that she started offering was the Encouragement Consultant, which is an Adlerian program created by Lynn Lott, who also is a co-creator of Positive Discipline with Jane Nelson.
Yeah.
On self discovery, on healing, all sorts of things. So I started to learn that, and then I wanted to know more, and I wanted to know more. So a few months later, there was the Positive Discipline course, and I did that. And the interesting thing is that, and then I chose my name for my business, which was Finding Your Courage, because I was beginning to discover that I had lived my first part of life, especially my parenting, with lack of courage. From fear. I was parenting from fear. fear to be imperfect, fear of what other people thought, fear of my mom's opinion on parenting, fear of the safety and well-being of our children, which is a natural fear, but the risk is that then you overprotect them.
Yes. Yeah, that's so true.
And I thought, no, I know what courage is now. You know, I know that, and fear is a cage.
Yeah.
You don't really live when you have all of these fears. And the courage is not to be fearless. That is irresponsibility. That being irresponsible. The courage is to actually do things that are uncomfortable when you feel that they are right. And even if it means that make you vulnerable, that make you, vulnerable, that touch your emotions and things like that. And so I chose that name, and then I started to give courses to parents with a colleague of mine here in Panama, in Virginia. We were giving, pardon?
You give these courses in Spanish in Panama?
In Spanish. Yeah, I have been working in all three languages, but the bulk of my work is in Spanish.
Brilliant.
And the more I was teaching positive discipline, the more I realized that the techniques, it's not just about learning techniques to change your child behavior. It's changing yourself and your beliefs about what parenting is, and then what the tools you're learning then make sense and they are effective. But just applying tools with your own mindset doesn't work. And again, the change, and then I started to read all sorts of other books. I started to do all sorts of other courses. And just the other day, I decided to read these two books again.
Okay, great.
And this one I hadn't touched since I started the positive discipline. And I realized how much that enough would help change so much in our relationship with our children.
I agree.
It's amazing. So this is the short, long story.
Short, long story. And this is such a coincidence. I love it. I have that book here as well on my shelf. And I found The Gift of Imperfection when I Googled having the courage to be imperfect. And, and this book by Brené Brown came up. So it's so aligned. And before we go more into the courage to be imperfect, and you've already shared a good bit on courage, but what does courage mean to you, Raffy?
It's interesting because I think can I read you a couple of quotes from the book?
Please do.
Because that has helped me. First of all, Brené Brown discovered that the original word of courage had a different meaning. And of course, I can't find it at the moment, but it is telling what is in your mind from your heart. That was the Latin meaning of courage. And then in the century, it has been changed into being a hero. And often we associate courage as something outside, other people are being courageous. We can't. Well, actually, the word courage comes from the Latin core or the French core, and it's from the heart. It's connected to the heart, and I believe we all are born with courage. Thing is that it's as we grow up, it is kind of muffled by society and by the type of parenting we receive. So it's a question not to discover, to learn. Well, we learn courage, but we also just discover it inside us. And there is this lovely quote that Brené Brown mentioned from a theologian called Mary Daly that says, courage is like, it's an habitus, a habit, a virtue. You get it by courageous acts. It's like you learn to swim by swimming. and you learn to courage by couraging.
Wow.
And I remember this phrase. In fact, I wrote it here on the side, couraging, and this couraging. And I remember that was the time when I started also to do the artist way. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yes.
And so I was writing every day 3 pages, 3 big pages, longhand. And every day I was writing the word couraging. How can I do couraging? Because I really felt that it was something I needed to unblock in me. I didn't feel that I was working, that I was practicing courage in my life. And I remember also another phrase by Eleanor Roosevelt, do every day something that scares you. And so the courage for me, it's not just the big heroic actions of someone. It's every day doing a little thing that is uncomfortable. And sometimes it's just perhaps doing what you've been procrastinating for a bit. Just get up and doing it.
Yeah.
Or perhaps being open to listen to a person whose opinions are different from yours. Little things like that. That is courage. Everything that takes us and help us enlarge our comfort zone. I don't know if it makes any sense.
It makes total sense. And when you were speaking, I was just reminded of, so for me, showing up online, for example, this is so easy in a conversation where it's like a two-way interaction. But my video that I published on YouTube before this one is going up, I was just speaking to the camera, and it's not that, how do I say this? This is not easy, none of us who do this are born with this. It takes so much courage and having this one-way conversation with the camera, I get so nervous, Raffy. Eventually, my aim is to film my bloopers where it takes me 10 goes to get started. And I was just sitting here and I was like, I am so nervous. I can't do this, and we have an Adler quote that I also want to share is, it's not really, it's the willingness to try something, even though it could be a risk and we don't know the outcome.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
So
yes, I think one of the things I've started to learn is there are so many things connected together. So when you live from fear, which is a natural way, because our brain is naturally programmed to keep us safe.
Yeah.
Then you grasp and you hold on to certainties. So you only do the things that you know already, you expect what the outcome will be. In a book that Brené Brown mentions and then that I then read by Pema Chodron is Comfortable with Uncertainty.
Oh, interesting.
Which is one of the Buddhist principles. And I thought, wow, the moment you are comfortable with uncertainty and you let go of control, which was one of my other things, because if you want to be perfect all the time, you need to control everything.
Oh, yes.
Because anything that is out of your control, it's all connected. And it's not living. I just feel, okay, it takes a lot of courage to step out, but at the same time, it gives you so much more freedom. You don't have to carry that big backpack with all the possibility. What if that happens and it goes wrong? What if that happens and it goes wrong? And there was another beautiful quote from this book, which is by another woman theologian, Anne Lamott. And it says, the opposite of faith is not doubt. The opposite of faith is certainty.
Okay, that makes sense.
When you need to have it all controlled, and so you don't really have the faith that things happen, that the right things happen at the right moment.
Yeah.
That things can be different from my obstinate, inflexible way of seeing them, and that there are many more opportunity and possibility out there than my little box that I created for myself.
Wow.
And I thought, whoa, all these things,
Yeah.
they were just popcorn for me. I was listening to this book and all the popcorns were, and I thought, oh, I haven't lived all these years.
Yeah. Yes.
I have survived to try to keep everything juggling up in the air, and making sure everyone else, because that's the other problem, when you live trying to control everything, trying to be perfect all the time, then that's what you expect of your children, for example.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I think that was one of the many mistakes, or the many unhelpful practice in my parenting with the first two children, is I expected them to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So what they saw on my face, and especially my daughter, who was the first one,
Mm-hmm.
and we tend to make most of the mistakes with our first child. And she was a girl as well, and so there are all the issues of mother and daughter.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she read on my face all the time, and at the end, later on, when we were able to talk more openly about certain things,
Yeah.
she was saying, I would only see disappointment on your
Mm-hmm.
face. Can
Wow.
you imagine?
Mm. Yeah.
When what a child needs is to feel that they belong in the
Yeah.
family, that they are loved and accepted for who they are.
Yeah.
So, I think perfection is a killer,
Yeah.
really.
It does. Absolutely. And thank you so much. You just had me learn a few things of why I struggled with some concepts, because I would come from that same, only perfection counts. And we spoke about this, I don't know, was it in our group or in a different group? The minute you think you then reach that perfection, and I love Brene Brown's definition of perfection, it's someone else's measuring stick that we compare ourselves to. And I always share that with the parents too, that once you have reached that thing that think other people is perfect, then there's the next thing, and especially as a child, to parents who have these tendencies, I grew up and it was never good enough. And the next thing already was thrown at me. And so anyway, we could go much deeper into this. But what I wanted to say was, I struggled as a parent in the early days with concepts of have faith in your child. I didn't even know how to have faith in myself, because like you so beautifully shared, it was all about I needed to control everything because I needed to have certainty, So to my next question, and my daughter gave, I need to bring her wisdom in, because so she's in our pre-chat, you asked, or you wondered what age she is. She's now 13, Raffy, and she was 11 when I had a conversation with her about the courage to be imperfect, And this comes from Rudolf Dreikurs, who positive discipline is based on, and amongst other things. And my daughter said, well, you shouldn't call it that, having the courage to be imperfect. You should call it having the courage to accept to be imperfect, because that we are all imperfect is a total given. There isn't any doubt about that. So it's isn't that so wise, And my question to you is, why is this important for parents to have that courage to be imperfect, and maybe a couple of tips on how to practice it?
Where do we start?
Yes.
Well, first of all, by practicing that, then we help our children to be more resilient, and not to go walk the same rope we have walked of trying to be perfect. You know, as we know, the children learn from us much more from what we model than for what we may say to them. So, you know, even if logically I'm telling my child, well, you know, we are all, no one is perfect, we are all fine. And then they hear us being judgmental about ourselves when we make a mistake, or they see us that we don't try something new, or we don't challenge ourselves to learn something new because we are worried about failure, we are worried about what other people think, then that's the message they receive. We can say until we are blue on our face, oh, no one is perfect, we can learn from our mistakes, but then we don't practice it. That's what they learn.
Yeah.
That's what, and so I think accepting. There is another book very interesting, which I'd like to go back and read. Mindset. Have you read it?
I've only heard about it. Who's the author? Carol Dweck. Yes, I heard about it.
It's here.
Okay.
Mindset. And it talks about how children, well, people in general, but we can start from children, have two types of mindset. The fixed mindset,
yes,
where I'm like that and I'm not going to change. I can't learn new skills. I can't, you know, which comes from this fear of making mistakes, of being perceived as imperfect, and the growth mindset, which is I'm trying, I'm learning. That mistake was an opportunity for growth. How can I learn? I mean, in my opinion, and again, that's the great gift from Adlerian psychology and from positive discipline, is that mistakes are opportunities for growth and for learning. There is the only failure for me, it happens when we don't learn from our mistakes. And that is a pity. So there are lots of YouTube videos with interviews to Carol Dweck. Not everyone likes to read, and but they also mention experiments they've done with children, for example, where you know, two groups of children were given. I think they were made to put together a puzzle. And when they finished, one group of children were praised for their intelligence, for how pretty the puzzle looked, etc., etc. And the other group was actually told, was praised for the effort they made in making the, and they told them things like, you need to be proud of yourself, you put in a lot of effort and all of that. And then both groups, they were given a more difficult, or offered the opportunity to do a more difficult puzzle. The ones who were praised for their effort, not necessarily for the result, they were much more likely to want to try it. Again, the other ones, they were afraid to not be able to do it. So it's all very connected. So what we as parents model, it's so much more important to whatever positive discipline techniques we might learn. And in fact, in David Greatly, Brené Brown says, you know, what we are as persons and how we relate to the world is a much stronger indicator on how our children will grow up to be than whatever we may know about parenting.
Wow, that's big.
It is big.
Yeah.
It is big. And I'm realizing that more and more. And that's why now more than offering, I still offer positive discipline classes, but I've also trained now, I'm a certified family coach.
Okay.
And so I try to merge the two programs, you know, the positive discipline, the encouragement consultant, and the coaching, because it is a work from the inside. And not everyone is ready, and that's part of the courage also as us to accept that not everyone perhaps is ready to listen to that message or to start to do the work. So that's about it. And also, I think as part of the courage of being imperfect is also the courage of being vulnerable. Go hand in hand. And again, for me, vulnerability was a no. That was another thing that I needed to try to control my emotions. No one ever saw me crying. I couldn't show my vulnerable side. But then how can we help our kids to navigate their emotions, to become resilient if they don't have anyone to share what they're going through with? Because if you don't talk about certain things, they immediately understand that is a no area.
Exactly.
And also, I was the type of mom who, if my child was crying, I would say, I'll give you a better reason to cry if you don't stop. I was that type of parent. And my husband, who was very emotional, has always been much more emotional, was really freaking me out every time he would start to show some emotions. Thankfully, the children had him who can deal with their emotions. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Absolutely. And I made a mistake. I'm going to need to pause this here. Just for one moment, I'm going to take out the part that's missing, but I need to open the door to leave in the cat, so the cat can get to the food. So I'll be back in a moment. And then that was brilliant. Thank you. Just one more. Hi, I'm going to use this moment just to jump in here while my cat interrupted to be fed. And I hope you're enjoying my conversation with Raffy, who is just got so much in-depth knowledge about the gift of imperfection and having the courage to be imperfect and making mistakes. I am offering an event on the 5th of December between 8:30 p.m. and 10 p.m. GMT, where I'm introducing effortless parenting, which is based on positive discipline and Adlerian psychology. And I am going to explore with parents and caregivers some of the principles of this approach. And if you're enjoying this conversation and the openness and the honesty, then you will enjoy this event in December. I'm going to leave a link below this video. What the main feedback is from parents who have attended these events with me in the past is that it is so refreshing for them to hear that they're not alone and that other parents also have imperfect situations. So I'm going to let you jump right back to the conversation I'm having with Raffy and enjoy the end of our chat.
Another thing that is something we teach in positive discipline, that I think it's so important, and it is part of accepting, recognizing our imperfection, is realizing when we make a mistake and say sorry from the heart to our children. The thing is, again, we grew up in a context, at least I grew up in a culture where parents never say sorry. I don't think my parents ever said sorry, whether they made a mistake or not.
Yes.
You are, the parent is here, the child is here. So the parent is always right. Well, if we make a mistake and we go back to them and saying, I'm sorry, I did this because maybe I was feeling fear, I was feeling threatened, and I am so sorry. How can we do it differently next time? It teaches so much to our child, so much more than do it because I say so.
Absolutely. And they hear the why, right?
Yes. And sharing our vulnerability and allowing them to share their own vulnerability, their own fears. But they can only do it if they feel that if they will be loved no matter what, loved and accepted. there was that again Brené Brown for the first time opened my eyes. I'm sure other people did it in other books. The thing is, that was the book that to me started to open myself to in my mind to a new world. Is the difference between fitting in and belonging. We know that one of the two things that Adler said that the two biggest need for human beings is the need for belonging and the need for feeling worthy, feeling value and contributing. So belonging is not the same as fitting in. And often in the everyday language, they get confused. So fitting in means that you observe a situation and you need to change who you are in order to be accepted in a group, in a context, in a family, many times. And belonging is to know that you can be yourself no matter what, and you will be loved and accepted.
Oh, wow. What a big difference. Yeah.
It is, but and I certainly feel that more than anything else for my daughter, she never felt she was accepted for who she was and that she belonged.
Yeah.
And it's tragic because what a child needs most of all as growing up is feeling that is loved from the parents. And so that's why children try to please their parents and care about what the parents, the messages the parents send. And so they try to do things to be loved and accepted and looked after. And I was looking after perfectly to my children. They were fed, they were well dressed, they were going to all the different dance classes and this and the other. I did all the external thing. But I didn't do the internal things, which was a lot more important.
Yeah. And we're only finding this out now, right? Where a lot more people talk about it. And one of my favorite quotes, and I can't believe how aligned this is, because finding Brené Brown really opened me up, to this whole world as well. And I love this word, and the quote by Rudolf Dreikurs is that children need encouragement like a plant needs water, and even though encourage is spelled differently, right? It's spelled E-N and then courage. But if you say it in the English language, it means that, so it's a child in courage, and why is that so important for mothers and fathers out there to encourage their child, So this is kind of my last question. Why does a child need so much courage almost every day? And you've got this beautiful plant behind you, Raffy, we need to water these plants. Why do we need to give courage or encourage our children on a frequent, regular basis?
Well, there are so many reasons, but in part is to help them with their resilience, because the life has its challenges, and if they know inside that they can cope with those challenges, and with the uncertainty, and with the mistakes, and with the heartbreak, then they can face anything. And that's why encouragement in the positive discipline, they say, it doesn't look like praising the results or giving prizes for a good behavior. It's helping them discover all of their gifts that they are inside, praising or maybe recognizing more than praising the effort they are making, making them notice when they are being generous, brave, how they make other people feel, how they feel themselves. And it's so interesting. One thing that Brené Brown on this was talking about is with his parents, one thing that we know is to try, many of us do, is to intervene and rescue our kids a lot of the time because we want to prevent them from suffering.
Yeah.
However, we know that the resilience, the encouragement comes from the children being able to face a difficulty and at the end, on the other side, say, I've done it. I have it within myself to be able to, to face this difficulty again, to try to face another difficulty again. And in fact, she said something like, he says, I no longer see rescuing and intervening as unhelpful. I now think about it as dangerous.
Yeah.
Because if we want to help our kids to be resilient, to discover their courage in themselves, we need to allow them in situation where our first instinct is to go and solve the problem or give an advice or intervene and go let the suffering go away, is actually to hold back, and that is courage on the part of the parents. Hold back and allow them to see, to find a solution, to look for a solution. And it doesn't mean that you abandon them. You can be on the side. They can come. The important thing is they know they can come to you if they need some help. But also say, okay, I think you can do it. How did you do it last time? Instead of giving the first, answer when they ask us.
Yeah.
And that requires so much courage, but it's the way they learn their own courage.
Absolutely. And I don't know if other children, so my son is 10, 6 years younger than yours. And I hear that from him a lot. He will tell me when I'm overprotective, and more than anything, that is the thing that annoys him the most about my parenting. So I wouldn't be a shouty mother and they tell me, oh, I don't shout. And I take that as a compliment, but they will stop me very fast when I'm being overprotective because of my inability to have faith in myself, and then also to have faith in them.
And you said something very important. It says the inability of having faith in ourselves. And again, we can't give our children what we don't have. And that's why working in ourselves is so important.
Yeah.
Modeling how we face difficulties. And the encouragement, part of the encouragement comes from letting them learn that they can do things, they can face.
Yeah.
And it can start from an early age.
Yeah.
If, when they need to tie their shoes, I know that it's quicker for us to do it because we have 5 minutes before the school bell ring. But maybe we can organize ourselves and have 10 minutes so that 5 minutes are for him to practice do it, and then they know they can do it. It starts from very little.
And it may take that little bit longer to help with making time for training, but I remember that feeling. Even me as a mother, I was it's not a term that I use a lot, but where I was really proud when my child mastered that difficult thing of tying the shoelaces, that because I gave that space and allowed it to happen and not do it for my child. In closing, because we have this is for children of all ages, have you got an example in your own parenting where you did succeed, where maybe you stepped in a little bit too much and did it for your child, and then retrained yourself over the last few years to step back and then saw a different outcome? And feel free.
Well, I can give you a couple. Well, one is a very basic. I remember that we were already here and I was already learning about positive discipline. And we were in a restaurant where they brought a plastic bottle of water. And my instinct always has been get the bottle and open it. And my son was already 12. And I was about to go for the bottle, and I thought to myself, actually, he can open it, even if he struggles a bit. And so, and he was struggling a bit, and I was holding myself, pretending, having a conversation with my husband, pretending I wasn't noticing, and then he did it. And from then on, he did that.
Yeah.
And the second one is, again, I had already certified in positive discipline. He was in a different school from the one he's now. He was about 13. And I was a typical hovering parent, so I every day would enter the platform where all the grades were and where all the homeworks were, and I was on top of everything, and I would direct what, and all the time being on top of him, well, shouldn't you be doing homework, this and the other.
Yeah.
Until one day when I said to him, and I think it is important to have the conversation ahead of time, said, look, from now on, I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't think it was helpful. I think you can organize yourself, and I trust that you can do your work.
Yeah.
And I said, I will only go in from time to time to check your results to see, if there's any need for adjustment. The result was that a week or so later, he got a 1, which is is the lower grade because he hadn't turned in he forgot to turn in the homework.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, what's that? Oh, I forgot to turn in. Okay. I said, you can talk to your teacher and solve this. And I don't think he's ever got a 1 again. And he's so organized with his studies. And in fact, this year, he's changed schools as well, but he's they do special things, which I don't know if it's actually very good, with pricing at the end, but he got top prize for his class and all of it. But again, it took a lot of work on my part to stop being controlling and to tell him, I know that you have it in you. Because that's the thing, the moment we do things for them, the message they receive is, you can't do it without me. Or I don't trust that you can do it unless I'm on top of you all the time.
Yes, that's exactly the underlying unspoken message, right? Which is, when we hear it, it really starts to waken us up. So the parent who's watching this, I'd love to hear maybe in the comments below, or even reach out to Raffy or myself, and I would love to hear an example of where you managed to stand back a little, where you maybe would have gone in between you and the child in the situation before, and what kind of wins and results you got as a result. And I would really invite you, to try that out, and you'd be amazed. I think I showed my 10-year-old how to put on a fitted sheet on a mattress, and I didn't really think that he would even take notice, of being shown how to do it. And then a week later, it needed changing for some reason. And his dad told me that my 10-year-old did it himself. And I went, how did you know how to do that? And it was on, and it stayed on, with the 4 corners. It can be so awkward. Yes. And he just said to me, you showed me how to do it, So
they can do a lot more than we give them credit for. And if they don't do it perfectly, that's the other thing about being imperfect.
Yes.
So many times we do things because we want them to be our way. And in doing that, we prevent them from doing it their way, which is maybe is not necessarily bad, but also we just give them the opportunity to try, to practice, to learn, to improve. How many times we don't, we know how to fill the dishwashing machine, and so we are the only one doing it because it has to be done our way. But in that way, it's that we don't ask our child to cooperate in the family by fitting. And I think doing things imperfectly and give them the opportunity to learn, to cooperate in the house, and to know that they can do it is so much more important than the final result of doing it perfectly.
And you just reminded me of something else we could talk for hours more on this topic. There's so much to say, but one of these gifts, these gifts of imperfections, as Brene Brown calls it, one of them was for me to see, first of all, stopping that pattern that this is how we've always done it and we will continue to do it this way. And I think, and maybe this is also how do I say this? To accept and have courage it's okay to age and be the older generation, because I have now this trust that this is the next and the new generation. And I really believe in evolution in the way of every generation does it a bit better than the one that came before. And like you said, that example with the dishwasher, what if this next generation is coming up by being allowed to fill and stack the dishwasher with a completely new way of doing it that brings out all these new examples, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
yeah, and there's so much freedom and creativity coming in with that, isn't there?
I think the moment we stop parenting from fear, we get out of the cage, you open up to infinite possibilities in the relationship with your children, in the relationship with the world, in what you can say. I mean, 10 years ago, if you were to tell me that I would be here talking about these things, sitting with you,
Yes.
doing live on Instagram and doing, I would have thought, no, you're talking about a different person.
Yeah. Wow, look at the progress you have made in your life, right?
Yes. And can I tell you another anecdote? Because, let me see what it is. Because I think as part of the courage, as I said before, is also accept the fact that sometimes people in your life are not ready yet to get out of the cage.
Yes.
And it's fine. All you can do is work on you. And I'll tell you this book, Respectful Parents, Respectful Kids.
Okay.
7 Keys to Turn Family Conflict into Cooperation.
Okay.
This was given to me by my sister-in-law about 15 years ago, 15, 16. Because obviously she was seeing certain things. And I got offended receiving that book.
Yes.
And I didn't open it for years. And it was, but it's one of the few books that hasn't been culled or sold or for every move we've had ever since.
Yes.
It all came with us. And I opened it about 2 or 3 years ago after starting working in parenting. And I couldn't believe how online. In fact, the word here is from Jane Nelson.
Really? What is the quote? If you don't mind reading it.
It says, get the best result from your kids with respectful tools that are neither punitive nor permissive. Jane Nelson.
Beautiful.
And I just thought, wow, I had this with me all the time for 15 years, but I wasn't ready. Even though I had that little thing inside, that feeling uncomfortable with my style of parenting, I wasn't still, I don't know, maybe I hadn't touched sometimes you have to really go low to be able to, but it's life.
Yes.
And the same way with our children, I suppose, sometimes they may not be ready for certain, and that's, they may not be ready for certain developmental things that other kids of their age have done. And I think it's important to respect that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a lot of practice and a lot of tips. And unfortunately, I don't understand the Spanish, but I did visit your Instagram channel in Spanish. And also Emmy, who's been on my channel, is there with you sometimes. And where else can parents find you? So this is now for parents who speak English, Italian, or Spanish, and you do this work with.
Yes, I've done work in all the 3 languages. I also have on Facebook, but I kind of neglect a little bit. I just feel that I can focus on one particular platform, and it's mainly in Spanish. However, our second son, who did computer science, is in the process of starting creating a web page for me. I have a web page, but it's in Spanish again. So he will be doing one that people can access in the different languages.
Great.
And
Wow.
yeah.
Please, so if you do remember, please reach out when it's finished, and I can always
Okay.
afterwards edit here underneath our video.
But English-speaking people can find me as Finding Your Courage in Instagram or Facebook, and always contact me through direct message.
Right, brilliant. So thank you so much for coming on here. I took notes and I learned so much, and it's always so refreshing. I know it's not the easiest topic, I think, for parents, even from my experience sharing this module in the parenting course, that mistakes are opportunities for learning, because there's can be so much shame attached to making mistakes. And I absolutely love that we have this conversation, and I'm feeling we will talk about more topics in the coming year or years.
Yes,
So
I think so. I think so. And sometimes I need to be, someone have to stop me talking about all this, because I'm very passionate. Maybe it's my way of atoning the parenting I was doing before, and I'm trying to, kind of heal some of the damage done.
And then that can also lead to that to really knowing it deep inside. And it reminds me just now of Jane Nelson, for those who are interested in reading her book, A Positive Discipline. And it's a series for everything out there, for single parents, for overwhelmed and stressed parents, for the toddler years, for teenage years. And what impressed me most was her courage to share how she had parented the first few children in the more traditional way. And then she had also that comparison of when she found the Adlerian way of parenting, how then it was very different with the other children. And so we also need that, and yeah, I want to really thank you. And
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Leave it here. Thank you very much, Raffy.
Thank you. Bye.